All right, all right, all right. Welcome back to the Misfit Nation. If you've not had a chance to check out our first book, The 13-Step Guide to Success, it is available on Amazon in Kindle and paperback versions. If you're going through some hard times, you don't have to go it alone. Phone a friend and chat it out. If you don't want to talk to a friend because you feel like you're putting a burden on them or you're embarrassed, call the crisis hotline at 1-800-273-8255. If you're a veteran, press 1. Do not make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you're a new listener, we appreciate you joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast apps. Also, download the Military Broadcast Radio app to follow our family of shows. Also, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, _Misfit Nation. This will keep you up to date with the latest episodes of the Misfit Nation and also allow you to hear the amazing stories of our guests. Speaking of which, our next guest is a mental health coach, professional speaker, podcast host of The Dylan Experience, entrepreneur, combat veteran, and author of the book, Defy the Darkness, a story of suicide, mental health, and overcoming your hardest battles. In January 2020, Dylan began speaking on TikTok about mental health and trauma. By 2022, he has accumulated more than 500,000 followers, supporting his daily content centered around having a realistic conversation about things like mental health, abuse, trauma, self-harm, and suicide. His relentless pursuit has allowed him to impact the lives of millions while also developing a platform to help society rethink human connection and mental health. So without further ado, let's welcome to the Misfit Nation, Dylan Sessler. How you doing, Dylan?
I'm doing well, Rich. How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for agreeing to sit with us here on the Misfit Nation and share your story with us.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your backstory from as far back as you want to go to when you joined the military, what you did in the military, and how we got to where we are now.
Well, I am still in the military. I still love just going to drill every month. I'm National Guard. I'm a sniper section leader in the Wisconsin National Guard right now. I have been, it's been 14 years now as of January. Can't slow down now. But my story really starts probably about 6 years old when my father committed suicide. There was a really big void kind of shifted into my life at that point in time. And that was really, if you go back all the way to 6 years old, that was the reason that I joined the military. It was, my story really starts there and really develops this overwhelming sense of a need to fill that void. And what I did was, after my dad died, I made a rule, very simple: not going to end up like my dad. So I'm not going to drink alcohol. I'm not going to do tobacco. I'm not going to do drugs, and I'm not going to commit suicide. And those 4 rules really made my life pretty simple, right? I was going to follow those and I was going to be fine. But it turns out, like, when I developed all of the guilt and the shame around that suicide, of feeling like I was responsible for my father's death, obviously illogical, but I was 6 years old and I didn't have any other way to process it. So that's what I clung to. I found myself committing probably the worst act I could probably commit to myself, and focusing and obsessing over suicide. And that's kind of where the military came in, as I was molded around this idea that I had to do something honorable in some way. And that's what I did. I chose the military, but in many ways I chose the military more to die than to do anything else with it. Obviously that since has changed, but it was the primary driver behind me joining the military itself. And, in my own experience, it's more common than you'd expect, is that people join the military in a way, a roundabout way, to find a way out, right? Find a way to, get away from the difficulties of life and create some sense of simplicity or way to just escape the world. The military kind of becomes that way of going out in the best way you can. And that's really where my story starts, 6 years old. It's clearly not ended yet, but in 2015, it nearly did. After my first deployment, I kind of found myself in a pretty rough place mentally. where I tore my ACL, my left ACL, right when I got back from Afghanistan. Spent about 7 to 8 months in Fort Knox, just recuperating and trying to recover from surgery, completely alone. And I found myself completely isolated. I learned about isolation far before COVID ever hit us, and it beat me up. It destroyed me in many ways. And I came home shaken, not only from my deployment, but from this time alone, where I started to feel like I was worthless, started to feel like I was a burden on people. I came back from that injury, and then almost exactly a year later, I tore my other ACL. And then going through that whole process all over again. And then a year later, I tore my right ACL again. So I tore 3 ACLs. I only have 2 of them, and I replaced 2 of them. And it was right before I tore my 3rd one, where I couldn't see a way forward. I couldn't see a path forward. And that's when I almost committed suicide. It's when I almost ended my own life with my Glock 34. I just found myself sitting on my hallway floor, just contemplating what to do next. And that was where I kind of looked at myself, and I had to ask myself the question, how did you get here? And dig into that incredibly painful, traumatic, rough narrative of what my life has been up until that point, and realize that how I told that story was really the problem in all of it, because all I could see was how I was failing people that weren't necessarily even watching, failing people who weren't necessarily even alive, right? I was trying to make my father proud in a way that, he was never going to see me, and be able to talk to me about it and be able to tell me and give me that validation I was looking for. And so that's when I really started to, realize, if I don't change, I'm going to die. Right. And that's when all of this kind of started. Why you see me here in front of you today is very simply because when I was 1 millimeter away from pulling that trigger, I didn't, and some people might look at that and say, that's, you were a coward. But in many ways, the ability to hold that off, to stem that overwhelming rush of emotion, is an incredibly powerful use of your emotions. One that is very much linked to our desire for life. And regardless of how painful life is, innately, we want to live, we want to survive, and we want to keep going. And that's what I learned that day is, March of 2015, it was the moment when I realized that my life had some form of purpose. And if I didn't really step into it, I wouldn't understand it. I would never realize that potential that was within me. And here I am, 7 years later. I've got a book. I've got millions of followers. I've got almost 600,000 followers. I've got millions of likes on TikTok, and I could care less about any of that. What's more important to me is that I have a wife that I never would have met. I have a stepson that I never would have met. I'm about to have a daughter that I never would have met. I'm about to experience so many things in life, and I have already experienced so many things in life I never would have had the chance to, had that, 1 millimeter gone the other way. And that's really where, certainly my story isn't ended, but that's where it is right now. And that's where I've come from.
That's a tremendous journey you've been on. I mean, start off at 6 years old and have to go through what you went through at a tender young age. And like you said, not having those things around you to push you in the right direction, thinking the way you did going through life. And then fast forwarding all the way up to 2015, when you almost came full circle and did the same thing, basically. I'm glad you didn't, because you wouldn't be here right now. You're not a coward for not pulling the trigger. That's another stigma of the whole mental health thing. If you do it, you're a coward. If you don't do it, you're a coward. If you go get help, you're a coward. You're not a coward. You're a survivor right now, and you're showing why you're a survivor. You have a stepson, you have your wife, and pretty soon you're going to have your hands full with a little girl, and that's 18 years plus, because when she starts dating and gets that spouse, you have a lot of work to do on that way too.
Yep.
I'm here to tell you on that side. So it's a never-ending job with a daughter, and it's not something that you're programmed to do, but you'll learn it pretty quickly, especially with your leadership skills. I've had other veterans on here before who also went through that same journey you did, where they nearly ended it, and they felt there was a divine intervention that stopped them, both of them. Almost to the word, both of them said the same things. It was mind-boggling that they had that sign of light to stop, don't do it, and move forward and with a purpose. And I think that's what you're doing now. And what led you to go on TikTok to let this out?
For a long time, I just focused on me, right? Like the first 2 to 3 years were really just, I got to figure me out. I've got to understand who I am. But in the back of my mind, I always felt like in this process, I have a story to share. I have a narrative to expose and help people understand, because I've always been that person that, I never said a lot, but what I said was important. I wasn't someone that was going to fill a room with 100,000 words. I was going to fill a room with 100 words and make them count. And I've always been that person, and I've always been quiet, and yet my words matter, right? Like when I work with people, when I meet people, people are in many ways so surprised when they hear me talk about the things that I talk about, that it makes a difference. And so in all this process, I felt like I needed to share these words. I needed to get this stuff out. I needed to put this message forward, because I didn't see anybody talking about it when I was growing up. And then hear anyone talking about how hard this was, what it was like to lose a parent, what it was like to go through trauma, what it was like to live with PTSD, whether you knew it or not, what it was like to think about suicide every day of your life for 20 years. I didn't hear these people talking about these things, and so I did, right? And when it came down to it, I started becoming more confident. I was doing more research. I was becoming more self-confident, which was developing my self-worth. And in many ways, you probably know the same thing. Is like when you first start, you have no idea what you're doing. But when you get 20 episodes in your podcast under your belt, well, it was the same thing for me. You develop this sense of the message is more important than my feelings or my comfort. And so I'm going to figure this out. And so you stand in the pocket and you take the hits when you need to take the hits. And when you get down to it, you ultimately see the benefits, in the long run, of helping people, of being able to really understand things yourself. I think all of us are sitting here trying to understand what life really is. What is life supposed to provide me? What are we supposed to do with this thing called life? And I think we all wonder that at some point, but we don't really often get a chance to share it with the world and talk about it and expose like the reality that it's not just about, achieving your dreams. You're also going to be utterly heartbroken, utterly destroyed and defeated at times in your life. And how do you work through that? And I just wanted to open up the conversation. That's where it started. I was like, you know what? I don't hear people talking about this on TikTok, so I'm going to do it. And lo and behold, people wanted to talk about it and people wanted to hear about it. And I just kept going. And here I am.
I mean, as you know, there's a lot of people who do have issues with their mental health. And I think when you got on that platform, a lot of those people that were on there doing dances and challenges finally heard something worthwhile and said, hey, let me listen to this guy, and he's actually going to help me. You may not, of your 600,000, if you actually successfully get one of them to think things through, that's a victory.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're touching a lot more than one of the 600,000. As you said, you got like 1 million likes on there. So somewhere in there, your message is getting across and helping those out there who are afraid to reach out for help. Like I said in the opening monologue, if you don't feel like you're a burden to your friends by calling them and asking them to chat, they'll answer the phone and they'll chat with you. Most people say, call me if you have something. They don't really mean it, but a lot of people do mean it. And they want you to call and they want you to say, they want to talk to you because they don't want to not have you. And I think that's the biggest thing. So did you go to schooling to become a mental health coach, or did you use your experiences to become a coach, or combination?
I would say a combination. I like to downplay my study of sociology. I got an undergraduate degree in sociology, and then I went for my graduate degree, but then I had to go to Afghanistan. So I have one semester left of studying sociology, but I don't think I'm going to finish it just because I'm very happy where I am. And so that was really beneficial in understanding humans, right? Understanding how we operate and how we work. But a lot of what I do now is very much experiential, right? It's very much in my own research. I've read the very same books that a lot of PhD psychology students will read. And so I'm not saying that I'm certainly not a certified support specialist in any capacity, but I'm not stupid, right? And it's certainly helping. It's certainly working. I don't tell people what to do. I help people understand the consequences of their actions and their thoughts. And I help you develop your own sense of self-reliance, just like I've done with myself. And I think that's an incredibly healthy thing to do, is develop your sense of self-reliance on you and your identity. And that's, one of the things that you brought up was like, people want to hear from you and people want to talk to you. And sometimes the reality is not always the case at the time. Right. And so you might, some people aren't wrong when they call and they don't get an answer. But at the same time, there's a piece of you that can develop that sense of self-reliance where maybe you don't get an answer, but maybe you don't need an answer because you can work your way through that. Or maybe you can travel down a different route to figure out how to move forward, right? I think social media is a very connecting place. As much as a lot of people like to discredit it for being disconnecting, there's almost 600,000 people that follow me that find a way to continue living because of some of the content that I post, which means that maybe you need to find a different way. Rather than calling this person, maybe you DM or you reach out to someone that can connect in another way. We have a remarkable network of socially connected support people, right? Mental health coaches, just influencers in general, podcast hosts like yourself. Like, there's information everywhere that can help you solve your problem. And there's people having these conversations every single day on 7-second videos, 13-minute videos, podcasts, right? Audiobooks, like all of these conversations are being had. You just have to find them. And I like to help people understand that it doesn't take a psychologist to help you overcome what you're going through. It takes your own willingness to be reliant on yourself, to trust in yourself in a time where you've never known how to trust yourself. Well, I want to help people do that. I want to help people find the trust in themselves like I've found that, because I'm living proof that this is possible, right? I still have the 9mm round right next to me that I didn't shoot myself with, right? That's living proof of me still being here. I found it a couple of years ago when we moved, and I keep it here, right? Because that's my totem of, you're never going to do that again, and I promise you it's possible, but you have to find some form of self-reliance and self-trust and self-confidence in yourself. And that it takes tenacity. It takes effort. It takes work, and it certainly takes research. And that's what I've done.
That's amazing. And it's amazing that the reach, 10 years ago, we wouldn't think the reach would be there. Yep. As much as you have right now, or any of us have, just by all these platforms, like from social media, podcasting, or little videos here and there on YouTube and such. That reach now is global. You're reaching people all over the world, not just in the United States, not just in your neck of the woods in Wisconsin. You're hitting everybody, and that's a testament to where these platforms can take you on the positive side. Yeah, there's negativity and there's negative stuff to everything we do in life.
Right.
Social media is just one of those things to complain about. You can't blame social media on everything that happens to you in your life if you're part of the problem too. So if you can heal yourself from within, just like you said, you can get through those negative things to make them positives as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, in your job in the military, a sniper section leader, it's a stressful job for what you have to do. You have to make sure your section is on point, hidden and away from the enemy, and while also hunting down an enemy that you don't know and eliminating them before they hurt any of your friends or your peers. So that's a job, even after you were injured and went through this, you're still doing it. So that's a testament to your tenacity right there.
Yeah, I went through sniper school last year. So it's a new job, but it's not a new workload. I've always been a precision rifle shooter for probably the last decade and change. But I like to think of my work as quite paradoxical. It's very much different. Like one hand, I'm very much taking life, and on the other hand, I'm very much trying to save it. And I find that kind of ironic when I really think about it. And I still have yet to really kind of think my way through that one. It's very interesting to me.
Almost like you live in yin and yang at the same time. Yeah. So that could be your next book, Yin and Yang, that picture of you just swirling from camis to just like I dress now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think both are fundamentally necessary, right? As humans, that, you know, as wonderful and ideal as we like to think society is, it doesn't take away the fact that nature is our greatest enemy, right? It's certainly, we may look at ourselves as our greatest enemy, but at any point, a rock from outer space can come hurling at our planet, and guess what? Nature killed us, not humans, right? It's like we don't really think on the scale of what can really destroy humanity. And I think it's very important for us to be tenacious, to be ready to fight for ourselves. And in many ways, there's curative powers in being able to fight for yourself. And yet there's also incredibly important factors in being emotional, being soft. You know, there's both hard and soft. And I think you need to be able to balance both to have a happy life in some regard, if that's what you're looking for, you know?
Right. And I think that helps your mindset, your mindfulness can get you to that centerpiece while doing both right and left limits at the same time, and bring all things to one. And you'll be doing that soon when you have a little girl in your house. You'll have left, right limits, and your head will be spinning. So it'll be great. So just keep on your toes.
Absolutely. I don't know how to do anything else.
Watch out for Barbie shoes. That's the one hint I'll give you right now. That one's free.
They're like, I'm guessing they're like Legos, probably.
Yeah, they're horrible. That's how I found out I had plantar fasciitis.
Oof, brutal.
Yeah. So, I mean, you also showed that you can bounce back. I mean, 3 ACL injuries, tears. There's professional players that don't come back from that able to do their job. Yeah. You've come back. Sniper school is not easy. You had to use your legs in sniper school.
Well, it seems like all we did in sniper school is use our legs.
Yeah. And the ACL happens to be in the legs, for those listening and don't know anatomy too well, but the ACL is in your legs, and it's very important to you able to carry a load or move or pivot off a leg. And you were able to do that. And I'm sure, I know modern medicine's great, but I'm sure there was still some tinging and thinking about it while you're going through it.
It's a challenge, you know, and I elected to do a cadaver ACL. And so what that means is I took someone else's ACL, someone who unfortunately passed. I took their ACL and meshed it with mine. Right. And so they replaced it with mine. And so that process is incredibly difficult because it takes longer for the cell structure to actually, you know, like be mine. Right. It takes about a year. And so if you tear that ACL within, within about 2 years, you basically can't get the surgery again for another, like, it's like 3 years. Like you want to get to that 3-year mark and you're pretty good. Luckily for me, right, I tore my left ACL and that was good. That one stayed, but my right knee became more weak because of it. I partially tore my right ACL that year later, and then I fully tore my ACL another year later. So it was about the best of both worlds, right? Where I was able to, survive long enough and tear that one, and then I didn't tear it again. But man, the first 3-4 months is like you're learning to walk again.
Wow.
Right. You go into surgery and your leg completely atrophies. And you have no muscle. And so you're walking on basically a straight leg for 2 to 3 months until you get range of motion. And it's like you're flexing that muscle just to get it even remotely working. And I'm going to be honest with you, for 3 years, I thought I was going to get kicked out of the Army. And that was, at the time it was the scariest thing I'd ever been through. Like it's funny. Like I went to Afghanistan. Certainly there was fear there, but it was never like there was such a almost invincibility or carefree kind of attitude of like, I don't even care if I die. But then I get home and I tear my ACL and I'm like, I'm afraid to lose this thing, this piece of structure in my life where I have all of my closest friends, all my guys that I deployed with. I'm like, these are my people. They get me. They understand me. They spent a year with me and they have my back. I'm afraid to lose this. And so in many ways that like inspired me to just drive on to work through this. And I tried to do it all right as much as I can. It's my left knee has been great. My right knee's always kind of been a struggle, but it's surviving. I know I'm going to pay for that later in life, but I'm still going. It's been a crazy ride with all of this. I'm certainly not to my, I'm not 22 anymore. But I can hold my own. I can ruck, just like anybody else. And sniper school is rough because all they do, literally, it's like leg day every single day.
Yes.
And you're carrying a pack, you're carrying a 30, 40 pound pack and a 20-pound rifle and just rucking everywhere. So it's definitely a challenge, but one that I definitely relish.
Leg day every day and the world's craziest game of hide and seek.
Yep. Oh man, it's brutal. trying to crawl through Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
All it is like, you think it's grass, but it's not, because they have that, it's almost like a shale rock. And so the grass is just growing on top of it. And every time you're crawling through, you're jamming your knees on rocks that you never knew were there. It's brutal.
Here you are. Now you can laugh about it until you send one of your soldiers there and tell them, have fun, buddy.
Yep, pretty much.
Remember when I came back laughing and hurt? Yeah, you come back same way.
If I can do it at 31, I think there's a lot of guys out there that should be able to figure it out.
That's right. Well, Dylan, it's been great listening to your story, your journey. I've learned a lot from you. I'm motivated by you. You're tenacious. Your ability to see where things are moving in the world and get on that platform and use it for good that's something that should be applauded. And I think you don't stop doing it, of course, and keep doing it for the reasons you're doing it. How does someone get in contact with you, either to follow you on TikTok or just to chat with you like I am now?
Well, you can look me up on TikTok. It's just my name, Dylan_Sessler. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I'm on YouTube. I've got my own podcast, The Dylan Experience. I've got my book. It's on Amazon mostly, but it's also on Target.com, everything, everywhere else that sells books, basically. Just Google me. You'll probably find me, but my website's DylanSessler.com. So pretty straightforward.
Awesome. Thanks again for coming on and sharing your journey with us. I'll probably ask you to come back on again in the future as we see what goes on in the world.
Absolutely. I'd love to. Appreciate having me on.
No problem, brother. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you.